a boxing betting expert.
I know, David.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
He really gets into the nitty-gritty of this whole thing.
Alister, thanks for joining me.
The main man himself.
Yeah, man, it's in the flesh. So I found you on TikTok, and I love the style that you deliver your content. Insightful, no BS. You cut straight to what everyone wants to hear. So yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing your stuff. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we can come up with in this next sort of 20 minutes or so.
Definitely looking forward to it.
Brilliant. So what is your first boxing memory? How did you get into the sport?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd say my first boxing memory was probably, probably in the early 90s or late 90s, early 2000s, I'd say.
Okay.
I think my first proper fight that I watched was Tyson Lennox Lewis. The rematch. Was it the rematch? The second fight.
Tyson Lewis, the first one they only fought once in 2002.
2002, sorry, yeah. So 2002, when Lennox Lewis stopped Mike Tyson. That's the first memories that I had in boxing. And then I guess that's the memory that's really stuck in my head, because I remember at the time, my dad was a huge boxing fan. And I remember he was cheering on Mike Tyson despite him being the Brit. So, I think with Lennox Lewis, he's always kind of had his foot in the UK, in Canada, and in the States as well. But that was my first early memory of watching a boxing fight. I was probably about 6 at the time.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that era was I saw those guys in their prime. I got into boxing when they were in their prime. So they're like late 30s by then.
Yeah.
Your dad's telling you these guys were legends 10 years ago, and you're seeing like faded versions of. But you still saw a little bit of peak Lennox then.
I did. If I retract my memory, so yeah, obviously the Vitaly Klitschko fight. I remember that fight.
Brutal, yeah.
So Lennox Lewis stopping. I think he had the cut. The
terrible cut.
Yeah. So
behind on points.
Yeah. But it was a epic fight from my memory. And then obviously you got the British dust up. So Chris Eubank Senior.
Yeah.
Against Nigel Benn, the Dark Destroyer. So those are kind of the memories that I've got from early age. And then I guess probably over in the early 2000s into the mid 2000s, that's at a mature age, that's when I kind of really locked into boxing a lot more. And I'd say more so over the last few years, I've actually gone back to watch fights in the 80s and the 70s. So the throwback fights as well.
Yeah, right. Great. Yeah. So you see a different different Mike Tyson from the one who fought Lennox Lewis when you go back 15 years.
That wasn't a Mike Tyson that was fit to be in the ring, to be honest. I think he'd come out of prison. He had a couple fights and then went straight into the Lennox Lewis fights. Yeah. So, I'd say I probably saw a lot of Mike Tyson towards the end of his career, to be honest.
Yeah, great. So was your father a boxer? Or just
he wasn't a boxer, but I'd say he was a neutral. He was a neutral boxing fan. The community that I come from as well, in East London as well. There's loads of boxing gyms around, so it's quite a boxing knit community as well.
Have you boxed?
I have boxed. Not professionally. I would say that I have like sparred and stuff for fun, but nothing crazy, to be honest.
Yeah, but enough. You got the foundations.
Exactly, the basic fundamentals. I like to think anyway.
So since those early sort of fights watching with your dad, who's been your favourite fighter to watch since then?
Between what period?
So since you can remember, since active fighters you've watched.
Active fighters since early 2000 to now. The best fighter that I've probably seen or watched, that's a really good question. I'd say there's probably two. I think obviously I'd say Floyd Mayweather, number one. He has to be in there. And I'd say that's more kind of like the new generation, even though he's retired. So definitely Floyd, just due to his slick boxing skills and master defense as well. And I think with Floyd, his career, he picked the right fights at the right time. But also he fought the best. So I definitely have to say Floyd Mayweather. And then I'd say the second fighter, that's a tough one, to be honest. It's a tough one. I think I'm probably gonna go. I'd probably say I like Joe Calzaghe, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, nice, great.
I think that's a different option. I could have gone with anyone else, but I'll say Calzaghe for sure. Very underrated fighter.
I agree, and also Floyd and Calzaghe, you wouldn't normally put them together, but they both had hand trouble. They both didn't punch. They didn't punch as hard as they could because of their hands. They tend to go to the distance.
They're shots.
And and they were slick boxes. Yeah, great.
Slick boxes.
And okay, so a super middleweight and a welterweight. So did you have a favorite weight division?
I'd say my top 3 weight classes. I'd say is super lightweight. So I think that's 130 pounds. No, 135 pounds. Sorry, super lightweight, 135 pound. I'd say I like 147, so welterweight.
Yeah.
I also like the middleweight divisions because you've got a lot of good fighters, old school and current.
Yeah.
And then obviously the heavyweights have to be in there. I think the heavyweight division for me is probably the top of the crop. But I will say I do appreciate the skill level in the smaller weight classes as well.
Right. So you're a purist. You're tuning in for everything, the little guys all the way to the big guys.
Exactly. I appreciate the little guys because for me, the skill level's unmatched. I think with the heavyweights, you're looking at knockouts and, that's what the fans want to see. But when you're watching, for example, in the light heavyweight division, you saw Dimitri Bivol versus Beterbiev. That's the highest skill level. And you'd be surprised, you don't get casuals tuning into those fights, but those are usually the best fights. Yeah.
It's interesting, that one, because boxing fans loved that fight. Like, it was brilliant, and
that was the best fight of the year for me.
It was amazing. So I was literally on the edge of my seat every second of that fight. But I think my favorite fight was Usyk Fury 1 for like drama but I don't know how the Bivol Beterbiev translated to casuals. Did they tune in and go, "It's a bit boring," or do you think that was like appealing to casuals as well?
I think if you're a boxing fan and you haven't heard of those fighters, but you tuned in, I think you'd have more of a appetite to pay more attention to other fights in the world of boxing, because I think casuals look at big names, but purists look at divisions, titles on the line, what each fighter's fighting for, and also the skill level. I think skills are very underappreciated in boxing, and I think a lot of casuals don't really understand how important a high skill set is in boxing and how far it can actually take you.
And when you get a clash of styles as well, it gels so nicely. Like they're so different, their skill sets, and it makes it great.
Exactly. You had Beterbiev with a 100% knockout ratio, and Bivol, who was the master skill boxer, but you still saw Beterbiev take the win. So it's just how the judges see things. But I think a lot of purists definitely, I'd say a lot of casuals definitely would have tuned in, and I think they would have won a lot of fans in that fight as well.
It's been brilliant the last year or two. What the fights that we're getting now is crazy. Like it's almost exhausting. They come around so quickly, and now we've got this Christmas one, and then we've got February, and
exactly.
So that was a great fight this year. So what about you? Do you get many live fights?
I try to. So I'm based in the UK, London to be specific. Sometimes I'll get to the Copper Box, so Queensbury shows, or the O2. I've watched a few fights. I've gone to see AJ. I've watched Dylan White out there. I've seen Boatsi out there as well. I've watched Conor Benn out there as well. So I try to, but I think with me, because I'd class myself as someone that's above a casual fan, I like watching the fight on TV because you can break it down more and you have a good view close up with the cameras there on what's actually happening, and then I'm able to score the fight without having that distraction in the crowd. Exactly, so that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, you go to the fight for the night out, but if you actually want to study it, if it's one you're really interested in, you put it on your big screen at home. And
exactly.
Okay, so we talked about some of the tight scoring in the Beterbiev Bivol fight. So is there anything in the sport if you could change one rule that you'd like to see changed?
That's a really good question. And I've got the answer. I'd say the one thing in boxing that I would like to see changed is there being one champion in every division. I think in boxing, there's way too many belts. There's way too many champions. There's way too many interim belts. I think a lot of these governing bodies are just, collecting sanctioning fees for the sake of it. I think there needs to be one, like similar to the UFC, one belt, one champion. As a champion, you fight your mandatory and no rematch clauses. That's probably one of the key things I'd say that's probably slowed the sport down over the last few years, all these rematches, second fights and whatnot. But I think obviously from a promoter's perspective and a fighter's perspective as well, I think there's always more money in the rematch. So, it's a money-making business.
Great ones. Those are brilliant. And I think perhaps that single champion per division thing might be like with what the Saudis are doing. They bought the Ring magazine. It could be that in 12 months' time, we're back to having the Ring champion is the single one that counts, and forget all about who knows. But yeah, it's a great one. Okay, so what about in your time following the sport when you have been convinced you've had a hot take, either a prediction that you just felt was really obvious, a matchup that you just knew who was going to win, a really standout, strong opinion you've had?
Yeah, I've had a couple actually. You've probably seen on my page. I mean, in the 5v5, I think I probably got 3 out of the 5 correct. I think.
Did you?
Yeah, I did predict Amma Williams to beat Hamza Shiraz. I think I put that in, but I put Dubois to beat Hrgovic. That's one prediction that I got bang on because I think obviously boxing, like the boxing media, like TalkSport, all the other channels, they're very, very convincing to casual fans. So it's very easy to get into their heads and be like, oh, Hrgovic is unbeaten. He's the mandatory for the IBF belt. He's an Olympian. So, they look at that. But if you look at Hrgovic's last couple of fights, he hasn't looked great. Whereas Dubois was coming off, great wins. The loss to Usyk and then picked up a win over Jarrell Miller. And then who was it? And then went into the Hrgovic fight. So he has built up that experience. And I thought, my prediction was bang on for that fight. I thought Dubois would win the fight. And I think that was probably the prediction I got spot on.
That's great. And that's aged really well with what he's gone on to do against AJ. And also, and people weren't picking Dubois against Hrgovic. He'd looked really confused against Lorette. Was it Kevin Lorena?
People wrote him off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was a great pick. Okay, so what about getting it completely wrong, where you just thought you've been confident in? So my one example I always give is I thought David Haye would beat Bellew both times out, and he wasn't there. Have you got one that stands out where you just completely misread it?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one, actually. Ooh. What, both fights did you get it wrong?
I thought Haye would win both
second fight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think most people, that's probably one of the best examples, actually. I think
that's why I give it. So other people can't have it. Have you got any others?
Yeah. I'd say this one might be controversial, and it's a recent fight. I actually thought Errol Spence would beat Terence Crawford.
Oh, right.
Okay. Yeah, I actually thought Errol Spence had the advantage. Right. I wouldn't say beat, but I thought he had the advantage. I was probably sided more with Errol to win that fight. And you saw what happened in that fight.
Yeah.
I think it was always a 50-50 fight, but I lent more to Errol just because of the resume that he had and the fights that he's had. So I'd probably say that one's probably one I got totally wrong. And I think probably most people did as well.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think that did divide. Yeah, it was one of those ones with hindsight, it looked obvious, but at the time,
exactly.
Okay. So who, heavyweights are thriving now, but who do you have as like the best heavyweight of all time?
Of all time? We're talking, okay, I think obviously, if you're talking about legacy, inside and outside of the ring, you have to say Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that he was the best fighter of his generation, but I think he was the most effective and impactful fighter inside and outside the ring. So it has to be Muhammad Ali. But if you're talking about after Muhammad Ali, I'd say there's loads of fighters. I think best fighter of all time. It's hard to say, to be honest, because there's been a lot of great fighters. But if you was to say to me my top 3 favorite fighters of all time, I would say Muhammad Ali, number 1. Secondly, I'd say Tommy Hearns. Yeah. Now that was before my time, but he was a destructive fighter. Yeah. And someone that had raw power, like throwback fighters. So definitely Tommy Hearns, and then I'd say Floyd Mayweather. Yeah. I think Floyd Mayweather is probably the most skilled fighter of the 3, but I'd say unbeaten, 50-0. Simply the best, to be honest. But there's other great fighters like George Foreman, Lennox Lewis, Marvin Hagler. So 100%. There's so many good fighters out there, but I'd say those 3 are definitely my favorite.
Have you ever met any pro boxers?
I've met a few, yeah. So I'd say I've met Lawrence Okoli. I've met Boatsi as well. I've met Conor Ben.
Okoli, what was that? Pre-heavyweight?
Pre-heavyweight, cruiserweight times, early on in his career as well. So I met him actually in Stratford. It was an open workout I was at. And then I've met Conor Ben. So I've got a few friends in boxing that actually that sparred him and stuff.
Oh, right.
So I've met him in person. And to my head, that's it really. So those ones I'd say that I've met in person. Like
nice. It's good. Active fighters at the top of their game.
Exactly. Active fighters, great. Exactly.
What do you think is the most surprising upset you've seen?
Oh, surprising upset. I don't like the word upset. But the most surprising upset that I've seen would probably be, that's a really good one. I think Lyndon Arthur versus Anthony Yarde, the first fight.
Yeah. Big favorite.
I think that was a big upset. And I think that fight will go over people's heads. I think that was during COVID times as well.
It was a weird time.
I thought Anthony Yarde won the fight.
Did they have a rematch?
They did. Yarde won by stoppage. He knocked him out.
Right.
And they're talking about a third fight as well. I've been seeing recently. Right. So there's a lot of noise around that.
That's a good one. And what about is there anything? So when you're making your assessments ahead of the fight, so you've got you pick the Dubois over Hrgović. Is there anything sort of specifically you look for in a matchup?
Yeah. Good question. So first thing I like to do is look at their last 3 fights.
Yeah.
That's the first thing, because I think your last fight is what I'm looking at for you to come in the ring. So you've always got to look at the last 2 to 3 fights, first of all, and you've got to look at the way that they've won. But you've also got to look at the styles that they've faced, and you've got to size up whether this style and this style, for example, Dubois versus Joseph Parker, I think that style could be wrong for Dubois. But I think AJ's style is all perfect for Dubois because he's easy to hit. I think Joseph Parker is more durable. He's got faster feet and he's got a better defense as well. So exactly. So I look at the last 3 opponents and I look at the styles that they've faced, and I look at the form that they're in, and just look at what style do I think is going to overpower the other style. And I also look at and try and understand like the game plan that each team may use in that fight. So that's kind of how I try to break down fights.
Brilliant. Excellent. Yeah. And okay, so what about controversial one? Any times you've seen some sportsmanship that's just turned you off, like the worst piece of sportsmanship you've seen?
Oh, I think this one is a throwback one. Mike Tyson biting Evander Holyfield's ear.
Crazy,
Was that in their first fight?
That was in the rematch,
That was in
1997.
the rematch in the second fight. Yeah. And that got disqualified, isn't it?
Yeah, third round.
Yeah.
I watched that live on TV. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen.
I think that's the worst sportsmanship I've seen.
Yeah.
In probably obviously over the last 25 years or 20 years.
Yeah.
I'd say in more recent time, probably the Ben Whittaker fight. I think the way that he went out and stuff, it looked a bit suspect, and then kind of just go out, and then afterwards interviews are coming out, and people are saying things. So I think you've got to respect your opponent, and I think that type of sportsmanship is important, respecting your opponent as well. And I think he definitely underestimated his opponent, but also didn't show that sportsmanship to carry on the fight. And we still haven't seen anything to suggest that the injury was. There was
a little plaster at the airport, wasn't there? And then, but I think they're gonna. I think I heard the rematching, immediate rematch.
They need to do the rematch. He can't escape that fight. He has to take that immediate rematch, because otherwise the public, the boxing fans, are not going to be happy with that one. And I think with Whittaker, though, I don't know if he has the power in that weight class, in that light heavyweight division. So we have to see what happens.
I think because he doesn't have the power, he like in modern world, you want highlights, you want a highlight reel, and if you can't knock guys out, he creates a highlight reel from showboating. That's his USP.
Yeah, that's his USP.
But it'd be interesting if he does rematch instantly, whether there'll be show. I mean, what do you make of the showboating he does?
I like it. it. I think it's entertaining.
Yeah.
I think everyone has their own personality in boxing. You see Tyson Fury showboating all the time, and bigging himself up. So I think it's good for the sport. It creates personality. But I think there's a time and place. That's all.
I agree. I think it's incredibly skillful. Like, it's not easy what Ben Whittaker does, and also if it's not effective, someone should just go and, like, when Nassim Hamed stepped, he was a big showboater as well. When he stepped up against Barrera, he couldn't do it, and he lost every round. So Whittaker, do it until you get found out, and then
time and place.
Time and place. So I know you're on a tight schedule, so we're going to go straight to. Do you have a favorite boxing quote?
Oh, yeah, I do actually. Everybody has a plan till they get hit in the face. Mike Tyson.
A few have said that one.
And that's true. Like, however way you want to see it. It's like you preparing for everyday life. Like you get up, go out, thinking that you've got a plan, but the weather might disrupt you, or the train might be cancelled, or there might be a car accident. So there's always something that's going to disrupt your plans. So everyone has a plan till they get hit. And once you get hit, you've got to find another way to win. So that's one of my favorite quotes.
Brilliant. And Tyson, like the old man Tyson, he's capable of some brilliant life affirming quotes. He comes up with some absolute gold. Okay, what about one of these, the best boxing movie you've seen, or book, or podcast you listen to?
Oh, that's a good one. Best boxing movie, I'd say Rocky.
Classic.
Well, definitely. I think that's just an old school classic. So that's definitely my favorite boxing film of all time. And then I think for podcasts, there's a few. There's a guy called Hatman who I really like. He's he's got a lot of good content, and he also breaks down fights as well. But he puts out other boxing content, and I think he's got a lot of people in the comments that say to him, "Oh, Hatman, you're thinking about this," but I think he is realistic. He does a lot of predictions as well. I tend to watch more of these theory videos to see what his perspective is on boxing. So I like that, and I also like obviously you got your classic IFL TVs. Talk Sport. I don't really like Talk Sport, if I'm honest, as much, because I think they're just sports people. They're not boxing people. I think other than Spencer, Oliver, and even Spencer sometimes, you have to question what he says. But other than that,
there's a script there, isn't it? You can just sense there's a bit of a script. There's a narrative they're following, and you just it's
exactly
kind of,
because
it's entertaining, but there's definitely something we're being fed.
Oh, 100%. And I think especially when they get like Frank Warren on the show or Eddie Head on the show, I think that they hold back a lot. Or like they just keep it surface level, so we're not getting like the true content that we should be getting.
That's why it's so important there are channels like yours out there where people don't have an agenda like that they're having to follow.
And I think it's it's completely neutral, fair. Obviously I've got fighters that I may sway to a bit more, but other than that, I focus more on the fighting. I don't focus on who I like or who I don't like. It's about me being realistic. So that's what my content's about.
Great. Okay, so the final one is what's the best entrance you've seen? And if you can't remember that, what would be your entrance music if you were a pro fighter?
Well, I'd say the best entrance that I'm not seen, I'd say, but the best entrance that I like the most is Chris Eubank Jr.'s when he comes out to Dr. Dre still.
Yeah, that's good.
Because I feel like it's just the aura, doesn't bounce around too much. He comes out. It's the same song every single fight as well. So it's a classic. And obviously the song's a classic, and you can just see the aura when Eubank comes out to that.
Great one now. I like you. I like Eubank Jr. I'm a fan of his. He's Marmite as well, but I think he's great.
Yeah, his ring walks are good. I like his ring walks. And then I'd say from the US, I'd say Tank.
Oh, you see him, does he?
Yeah. He tends to get like musicians that come out with him and they rap when he comes out. So it's quite entertaining. But also, if you're going back in the days, I'd say Prince Nassim as well.
Yeah, always. Yeah, he was the sort of original showman for those, wasn't he?
Yeah, original showman, exactly.
Okay, great.
From the ring walk to the ring.
Yeah, I saw the Halloween one the other day when he's like knocking over zombies and kicking over gravestones and stuff.
Funny enough, that popped up on my feed the other day. It's classic though.
Everyone saw that, I think. Brilliant, Alister. That's awesome. Okay, look, that was really quick, but it's flown by. We've done half an hour, so I really enjoyed that. We'll put the link to your TikTok in the description, obviously, and
definitely, A1 Talks at A1 Talks, A1_Talks on TikTok. So tune in. I'll be putting out more content 2025 and expanding, and I think this is great. We should probably do a lot more lives as well.
Let's do it.
And do it, get into it, find a topic and really attack it.
Well, like I say, like when I found your channel, I was like, oh, I'm watching all of these, and I went back. I said, yeah, and it was the 5x5. It was early summer when I saw it. So brilliant.
Yeah.
All right, Alister, good man. We'll talk to you again.
Thank you very much for your time.